Welcome back to another episode of I Wish They Knew, a show where we share big ideas that deserve more attention in about the time it takes to enjoy a cup of coffee. I'm Joe Hirsch. Today's wish comes from Ken Hughes. Ken is a globally recognized leader on consumer experience and modern consumer culture. He's advised major brands like Starbucks, Google, Coca-Cola, and the NFL on customer and employee experience strategies. He's called the king of customer experience for a good reason. Hey, Ken. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Delighted to be here.
What do you wish more people knew?
I wish more people understood that connection is everything. In customer experience, people disappear down the well of data lakes and silos of tech stacks, of new software, AI. But what they forget is that all that is just there for us to be able to foster a deep and powerful, meaningful, emotive connection with your customer. So it's the connection that makes the difference in loyalty. It's the connection that makes the difference in heart space. And so for me in my work as a behavioral scientist, connection ultimately is everything.
You argue, though, that this is really a cultural shift, right? This heart space that customers can enter into with the brands that serve them. One of the things that you talk about in building that out is letting chaos reign. It sounds a little edgy. What do you mean by that?
I think we have too much structure sometimes in the way we work corporately. So when you think about the essence of creativity, for instance, you have to have some kind of space for creativity to flow into. Before creativity comes curiosity. So if you go back to childhood, for instance, it's a really good example at the moment, the way screens and the digital reality that we live in as a society is actually killing creativity, innovation, and curiosity. So if you look at children today, they spend obviously significantly less time outside, significantly less time off screen. And you and I, when we grew up, we were, maybe this was wrong, but kind of pushed out of the house, and you sat on the sidewalk with your mates and you ended up doing something because there was this space, this vacuum into which you had to then come up with an idea to fill. And maybe you built a fort and you went off cycling your bikes, and yeah, you got into some trouble as well along the way. But the whole point was the curiosity of, well, what will we do? How could we fill our time? Ended up with you creating something. And you created a game or something to do. And today, of course, as children, but also as executives, anytime you have to yourself, you just reach for your device and you're just lost in that. And so for me, what I mean by chaos is you're never going to come up with new ideas, or you're never going to come up with a fundamentally different way of doing things if you obviously keep doing the same things and leaning into the same templates. And one of my favorite things in corporate is, we want new ideas, we want fascinating ways to do, and now fill out this template. And so, the template will kill any idea. The process will kill any idea. Or, then you have organizations who put a few beanbags in a meeting room and they think that's it. We're doing innovation. Yeah, as if you're going to have some fundamental idea just because you're not sitting on a chair. It's not the way creativity works. And so chaos to me is around letting loose in terms of ideation, but also from everything from recruitment. For instance, neurodiverse people generally aren't recruited into management roles because they're poor time managers and they're, they have other issues around data maybe. But unfortunately, their brains actually are probably the most creative. They will make links that other people won't make. And so we tend to avoid that chaos, if you like, in terms of recruitment, but actually it's that chaos that we need for genuine innovation and creative thinking. And so customer experience isn't, as I said, the data. This is a philosophy around how can we engage people's heart space. And so the 80s and 90s were very much about mind space. The advertising industry was fascinated by share of voice, share of mind. Do people remember our brand? And that's important, yes. But actually what we've now discovered from an emotional intelligence point of view is that it's the heart space that rules. And particularly as we come into AI agent consumerism, where the consumer is going to be stepping out of the decision-making process and your AI agent will be doing a lot of the background and a lot of the actual buying for you. It really matters, that heart space piece, that link with a brand, the affinity, the belonging, the customer lifetime value, these words we throw around the boardroom. They're going to become core to business success, because unless you have a strong emotional link with your customer, some kind of community belonging, some kind of tribal fandom, you really are going to struggle to get past that AI agent. It's just going to be a race to the bottom in terms of pricing or quality or delivery or commodity. And so really, we're coming into a time from consumerism where heart space will really rule brand relationship.
And I imagine creating that heart space and filling it with a genuine connection to your customers requires a little bit of letting go on the part of management and letting employees make those customer focused decisions and empowering them to sometimes bend the rules and creating a little bit of controlled chaos in the process, right?
Absolutely. I mean, the employee empowerment piece comes first. Absolutely. So I was on stage recently with Danny Mayer, the founder of Shake Shack, and we were having a chat, and he used a wonderful expression about the employee being your first customer. Like, looking after your employee is your first piece, because you cannot expect an employee to deliver any form of genuine, meaningful customer experience unless they themselves feel fully empowered to do so. Let me tell you a great story about the Ritz. Many people will know the Ritz-Carlton have a $2,000 budget available to any frontline worker to solve any pain point that may come up during a customer journey. You don't need management approval. You can just do it because the Ritz believe that you should do it. And so they go through significant training to empower the people on the front line to make those decisions, to make a difference. And there was this executive, he checked out of the hotel around 6:30 in the morning, quite early, to get a first flight out to Miami, where he had a really important business meeting. He's on the flight, he goes to open his laptop and discovers to his horror that his laptop isn't in his laptop bag. And he realizes, oh my God, I've left it in the hotel. So a couple of hours in the plane, thinks, oh God, lands, immediately calls the hotel front desk. They call housekeeping. The room hasn't even been turned yet. Housekeeping left themselves in, and they say, yeah, there it is, laptop on the desk. And she has two choices now. She can give that housekeeper can give it to guest services, which would be the usual process piece. And they would take it and they would send it back to the owner, and that would take 2 or 3 days. But this guy's got a really important presentation at 5 p.m. that day. And so the housekeeper, again, empowered to make a difference in customer experience, takes her apron off, takes the laptop, goes downstairs, gets a taxi to the airport, books herself onto the next plane to Miami, flies to Miami with the laptop, knocks on his hotel door and hands him the laptop. And, this is genius. And you wonder, well, like, what did her manager say when she discovered that she was off the schedule? Like, who's cleaning the room?
Yeah, where is she?
Yeah. And did she get fired? No, not. She got celebrated. Because this is what the Ritz-Carlton try and teach all their people. If you see a way to make a difference, and then that individual could have gone on to book 20 conferences in their hotel for the next 10 years, who knows? And so the magic of customer experience is about empowering your people to find all the moments in the customer journey potentially that can make a difference in someone's life. And that sometimes you have to step outside the process to do that. And if you stick to the terms and conditions, if you stick to this is the way things are done, or if you stick to the ROI, and this is one of my issues with customer experience, it's a question I often get, what's the ROI? Show me the ROI. And I understand when boards are being asked for a 10 million investment in a system, they want to see some ROI, but I try and move people from ROI to DTI, get away from return on investment to a desire to invest. There's a fundamental desire to invest in relationship, and we need to approach customers in the same way. We need to approach it with a genuine desire, not what we get out of the relationship, but what they would get. And together, then, we form human relationship is the best barometer, I think, for what we need to do in customer experience. And it's why, actually, when you're recruiting customer experience talent and leaders, we lean towards EQ more than IQ. We lean to emotional intelligence more than intellectual intelligence. Because yes, the data scientists people are very important and the systems are very good, but actually the systems are getting so good now they can run themselves. The AI, it's amazing. What we need in CX is a whole suite of people with deep emotional intelligence who focus on the connection, the behavioral part, not the science and the data part.
Yeah, DTI is really a crucial barometer of the health of those relationships, that desire to invest, because ultimately relationships are not about keeping score. It's about being generous and giving it away. What I'm wondering, though, is where the lines are on this let the chaos reign approach, because not every company has the kind of budget to invest, perhaps as Ritz. Not every employee maybe has the intuition to step into that space as this housekeeper did. What do you think are the guardrails that are reasonable that companies can put into place and say, we want to invest in our customers, we want to invest in our employees, they're our first customer, but how far does this go?
Yeah, I think I'm not a fan of guardrails. I don't think you learn much about I think guardrails are for 8-year-olds bowling, in terms of 10-pin bowling. But even then, you have to take the guardrails off soon enough and let them be disappointed to teach them how to knock the pins down, And I think employees are the same. I think you need to, the moment you give, we need you to be empowered. We need you to make a difference, but you must work within these. That's it. You've killed it. You've automatically killed it, because obviously you don't want them spending, $500,000. A client really needed to get somewhere, so I bought them a yacht. There needs to be some common sense, but
Sure.
I think the wonder and magic of customer experience is when the understanding of empathy and compassion really rises to the surface. And often there's zero costs involved. One of my favorite stories is from Virgin Atlantic. There was a UK family emigrating from the UK to the US. They turn up at the airport to check in, and the lady's checking them in, and she kind of starts laughing because she sees the little boy behind the parents holding his goldfish in a plastic bag. And she thinks, well, there's more than 100 mils of liquid in that bag. And you can't bring a fish on, like animals don't get to go on. So she kind of starts laughing and says, look, you can't bring the fish on board. And of course, the little boy starts roaring, crying, because he's emigrating. He's leaving his friends and his family and his school and his hobbies, and all he wanted to do was bring his little fish. And so, floods of tears in the airport. And so quick as a flash, with empathy, she says, oh, no, honey, I'm sorry. You don't understand. What I mean is you can't bring him on board. You got to give him to me, sweetheart. And I'll put him with all the other VIP goldfish that are flying today to Atlanta. So the little boy dries his tears and hands his fish proudly over to go to the VIP section of the goldfish plane. And so she prints out the boarding cards, gives them to the parents, who kind of wink at her and think, thank you so much. And they usher the kid through security. And they think, isn't that great? That Virgin lady really helped us diffuse the pain point. He'll forget about the fish. Off we go. Now, what the parents don't know is that as they're making their way through security, that lady takes out her phone and does what many parents have done before her. She took a few pictures of the goldfish, and she WhatsApped those pictures to her colleague in Atlanta, who left her workstation, drove to the local pet shop, and acquired an exactly identical looking goldfish. And 10 hours later, when that little boy's plane landed, she was there holding the fish, and he took it to America. And that story is a beautiful story that embodies not only empathy, compassion, and customer experience, but embodies the Virgin brand. Because very quickly you have access to the values of the Virgin brand. And you understand that the employees didn't need to call Sir Richard Branson and say, do you mind if I take an hour off to buy a fish? Because they live in an organization that tells them, again, see a pain point, step in, make the difference. And again, from a budget point of view, there was like $3 for a fish. So it doesn't always have to be the $1,000 ticket to deliver the laptop. This is about educating everybody in the front line. And by the way, everybody not in the front line, back to your point about philosophy, everyone in legal, everyone in accounting, everyone in logistics, everyone has a role to play in putting the customer truly at the center of everything and coming to work with a why, with a stronger why than, we sell this, or we deliver this service. So it is about making a difference in people's life, meaningful connection. And it's why Gen Z, when they're coming out of college now, are looking for brand positions where they can make a difference, where they can rise to that why. And that's really important.
Yeah, so it really gets to the ethos of surprise and delight, giving people the ability to make others feel that sense of wow. Like, I did not see that coming. In all your work with brands, have you found any surprises around the benefits of surprise and delight?
Yeah, I mean, the surprise, like the physiology of surprise, first of all, is hilarious, because it's one of the universal emotions. You've got, happiness, sadness, anger, disgust, contempt, anger, and surprise. It's universal, every geography, every culture. And physiologically, if you get surprised, your face will give it away, because your eyebrows arch, your eyes widen, your jaw, that cartoon kind of face. And then, in your brain, neurologically, surprise is actually an error message. It's something that has happened that shouldn't have happened. And so immediately there's adrenaline, there's dopamine, there's all these hormonal releases. Now, obviously, if it's a positive surprise, if your loved one has just come home from, a military stay as a surprise and you jump into their arms, it's a great positive moment. But there is that 1/25th of a second where the error message floods your body and thinks, what's going on? And then after that, there's the working out of what is happening. And if something positive is happening, because of the hormonal release in the body, that is coded then into that moment. And so memory and surprise have very strong interactions. Because again, going back to caveman instinct times, it's important that if something unexpected happens, that you remember what happened to survive the next time. And so for brands, what it means is if you go to surprise and delight and excite your customer beyond expectation, then every time you do that, that hormonal release is coded in a positive way to do with your brand. Now, the flip side to that, of course, is the same. If you let a customer down unexpectedly, they will also have the same hormonal release of surprise, but they will code that negatively towards your brand. And so for brands to actually win the race for relevance and to win that kind of heart space, going beyond customer expectation in a way that delights the customer, that makes them smile, that makes them feel ultimately. And this is what I teach a lot of the brands I work with all over the world. If your customer isn't feeling something, either during the post-purchase process or consuming the product, then you haven't really delivered anything beyond commodity product. And anyone can produce good product. Anyone can match your price point. What they can't do is change how customers feel. And once you once you go beyond expectations on a regular basis, once you surprise people on a regular basis, then you would start to end up with kind of an empowered consumer, a consumer who feels they belong to you. And so the result of investing in surprise and delight and going beyond expectation is the return you get as an empowered customer, a consumer who actually feels that I belong to this brand. I've actually stopped using the word customer experience a lot in my work. And I've kind of drifted into using customer intimacy. And customer intimacy, generally we crave intimacy because intimacy gives you depth. And what we have made the mistake on in the past in brand relationships is thinking that a customer who comes back to our store every week is loyal. No, that's transactional loyalty. Buy 9 cups of coffee, get a 10th coffee free. That's just entrapment. Even the language we use, customer acquisition, customer retention, they're all very aggressive. And it's not about relationship then, it's about transaction loyalty, maximum of transaction revenue, profit. Whereas when you flip it all to depth of relationship, so that's what customer lifetime value should be, a relationship. And so then you start to move to an intimacy model. And the intimacy model, like the definition of customer intimacy, is fostering a sense of closeness. How can you, in your customer experience delivery, foster some sense of closeness? Let me give you another airlines example. United Airlines, there was a guy called Kerry Drake, not important, just regular guy, lived in San Francisco. And he got that call. His mom was about to pass away. And he got that call, you got to get back tonight. It's tonight. And unfortunately, she lived in Lubbock, Texas, and he lived on the West Coast in San Francisco. So he raced to United Airlines website, got himself 2 flights via Houston to get home. But he only had about a 1-hour connection in Houston to make the second flight. He's sitting on the apron in San Francisco about to take off, and the pilot comes and says, look, I'm sorry, we got a 30, 40-minute delay here. And he realizes he's going to miss his connection, and that's it. He's not going to make that moment being at the bedside of a parent. And so he understandably starts crying on the plane. And the air hostess sees him crying and brings him some napkins to help him dry his tears and gets the story from him as to why he's crying. And she thinks, oh my God, that really sucks. And so she kind of casually chats to the captain about what had happened. And he thinks that does suck. And so they decide between them to have a bit of a collusion. And they radio ahead into Central, and they get talking to the pilot of the second plane off the radar. Because obviously when planes are in the sky, they make money. When they're on the ground, they don't. And so all the crew are bonus to keep the planes going. And they decide that sometimes the right thing to do isn't the profitable thing to do. And so the 2 pilots collude and decide to hold the second plane on the ground for whatever reason. I'm sure they found one. And so when Mr. Drake did land into Houston, he did that crazy running from gate to gate thing that we've all done, bags flying. And he came around the corner to find the second pilot standing at the top of the ramp with his arms outstretched, saying, Mr. Drake, please stop running. There's no need. This plane goes nowhere without you on board, sir. And so he gets on the plane and he does make it to say his final goodbye to his mum. And that story, of course, goes viral and it's covered by the media because it's a nice story. But who do you think Mr. Drake is going to fly with for the rest of his life?
Right. Exactly.
Like, that's how customer intimacy is born. Intimacy is born in seeing people, as humans with lives. And so every time a brand invites us into their life by buying us, that's what they're doing. They're inviting you into their life. And it's an invitation that we need to bring more respect to, as opposed to how many pallets did we sell this week? How many products did we move? And so customer intimacy changes the entire approach to the philosophy around customer experience. Because we're not just trying to make people have an experience. We're trying to foster a genuine sense of closeness with our customer. And so that's why it comes back to heart space. It comes back to empathy and compassion. It comes back to genuine care.
It's about transform, not transact.
Yeah, absolutely. Great way of putting it.
This conversation has been a surprise and a delight. The king of customer experience, Ken Hughes. Ken, thanks for sharing your wish with us today.
It's been a pleasure, Joe. Absolute pleasure.